Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of CliniScripts podcast. I'm your host Stacy, and I'm really excited to have you with us today as we dive into the intersection of mental health therapy and AI technology, especially the kind of tools that actually support clinicians, not overwhelm them. And today's guest is someone I'm truly looking forward to speaking with. So joining me today is Ruthie Ayzenberg. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed professional clinical counselor, and certified perinatal mental health specialist based in California. So she's also the founder of Mental Fitness Therapy, and her work focuses on supporting clients through prenatal and postpartum transitions, anxieties, depressions, and beyond. And she's also a yoga teacher, a podcaster, and someone with a deep commitment to balancing the clinical precision with human connection. So, Ruthie, welcome, and I'm so glad you are here today.
Stacy, for that wonderful introduction, and I'm really happy to be here talking with you today.
All right, that's great. So to kick us off, I know you've tested out a few AI tools before and had some mixed feeling. So let's start right there. So could you please share your experience and your thoughts on the tools?
Sure. I've tried out a few AI tools for clinical documentation, of course, the HIPAA compliant ones, which is very important, preserving our client confidentiality. And one thing that I really appreciated about the tools is the strong commitment to anonymizing all of the information so that they really are truly unidentifiable and untraceable to the individuals. Which helps me as a clinician to feel like my client's information is safe, and it also helps my clients feel that way as well. One of the advantages that I've enjoyed with using tools is that for clinicians, we use different approaches. We might be using, cognitive behavioral one day, another day we might be using IFS. So I like how the notes are able to be customized to different modalities that we might be using. And they really capture so many nuances of a session that just happen so quickly in real time. If I was writing the notes myself, it would take me a very long time to capture everything that an AI note would capture. However, another thing that's a positive with AI notes is that we can control the length and the detailedness of it. So we can have shorter ones, we can have more comprehensive ones, we can have ones that are better fitted for insurance compliance. And I just really like the versatility and the customization of the notes.
Oh, that's really great to know that, because I know like confidentially really is the foundation of the therapeutic relationship, and it's great to hear that you've explored tools that respect that so seriously. And so the fact that AI can offer not just efficiency but flexibility. So I think like a lot of people assume it's one size fits all, but what you are highlighting is that with the right tool, it can actually adapt to your clinical and documentation needs, whether that's quick notes after a check-in session or something more detailed for insured process. And that led me to another question I've been curious about. So do you think this kind of customization, especially like, being able to toggle between different note style, could actually support therapist burnout prevention by reducing that documentation overload we often talk about?
Depends on the therapist, their relationship to their notes, how many notes they have to do. I think it's very individual. One of the biggest factors that leads to therapist burnout is actually a lack of self-care. So if making notes faster and easier is a part of therapist self-care, then sure, yes, it can why not? However, for some therapists, and myself included, I actually don't use AI for all of my clients. I use for some, with their consent, of course, but for many of my clients, still don't feel so comfortable having something listening in on the session, which we have to respect that. And also sometimes I don't use them just for myself because I like to have that clinical sharpness, and writing the notes and remembering the session, writing the note myself, remembering what's important from the session. That helps me to just spend some time after the session engaging with the client's material and the process that happened. And so I find it actually sometimes for me helpful as a clinician and part of my clinical self-care to write the note myself. So I think for everybody, it's individual, and AI has a lot to offer, but it can also be a balance. I don't think it has to be a, all or nothing.
Yeah, definitely. So I believe it's such an important reminder because like the documentation isn't just a task to check out, but often part of the reflective process for many therapists. And I really appreciate you point out that what feel like self-care can look different depends on the therapist's style or even the client's comfort level. And it makes me think about how to balance the clinical sharpness with efficiency. So do you think there's a future where AI can support that reflective process, like it's not replace it, but maybe help organize or prompt those insights without taking over the human judgment behind them?
That's an amazing question, and something that we're all, going to discover, and it's going to evolve as we continue engaging with the AI relationship. At this point, AI is here. It's not going anywhere. So we can learn how to have a positive, supportive relationship with it. And I've seen, like with some AI software, they build the client's mind maps based on the content of the sessions. And that's really helpful to see all of the themes organized. I think with AI, yes, it can be like a conversation between AI and the therapist to figure out, to figure out in more depth what's going on for the client and reflect in that way. AI cannot pick up on facial cues. It can't pick up on nonverbals. It can't pick up on, it can't really pick up on the very subtle nuances. Maybe one day it will, but right now it can't. So those are things that would need to be captured by a therapist. AI cannot pick up on a client having flat affect or blunted affect, for example. A therapist can, but AI can help to articulate the main themes from the sessions. It can help to organize the content of the session very quickly. I think there's potential for a really nice relationship between therapist and AI.
Oh yeah, wow. It's an amazing answer. And like I really like the idea of evolving with AI, not around it. And I also like what you said about turning it into like a kind of dialogue and where the therapy remains in charge, but can use those tools to go deeper or get a different lens on the session. And I'm really glad that you brought up mind mapping. Like that's such a unique like application. Organizing session content visually can be so valuable, especially when we're tracking progress across complex cases. So it also makes me wonder, as someone who works a lot of with postpartum clients, where them like identity shifts, relationship changes, and like the emotional layering are so present. So do you see a role for AI in helping therapists track long-term patterns or support continuity of the care across life stages?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and absolutely, there's so many layers that are happening in a single therapy session, and of course, even more across time. There's what's happening for the client today, right? What's their presenting problem? There's their background history. There's their basic needs. There's their how are they like taking care of like their sleep, their nutrition, all of that stuff. It's all important, especially for new parents and new moms. And it's not in every session that if you have an hour of meeting with the client, you might not have a chance to cover that broad range of everything in every session. So I think it is helpful for AI to support this kind of tracking over time and making sure that all of these elements are on the radar, helping make sure that all of these elements are on the radar, and even reminding therapists like, the client, brought up struggling with nutrition maybe last week, and this week you didn't talk about it. So follow up about it next week if there's a chance. And this way it can keep all of these important areas of a client's life on the radar, especially since there are so many layers. Not to mention like the relationship with herself, relationship with the baby, relationship with the partner if there is one, family members, community. The therapist, there's so many layers there. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I really love how you frame that, almost like AI acting as a gentle clinic co-pilot, helping you hold space for the stress that might otherwise slip through during busy weeks, especially when with the clients navigating something as layered as the, like the postpartum adjustment, it's easy to focus on the urgent emotions of the moment and, intentionally missing the long-term patterns that they are quietly evolving in the background. And I imagine that also invites a new kind of workflow, like one where the therapy doesn't just rely on memory, but collaborate with a system that can help prioritize or nudge when something, like the deserve more attention. So yeah, so that brings me to a slightly different but connected, the last question. So how do you personally balance this clinical sharpness you talked about earlier with the conversation that AI brings? Are there moments where you feel one should take a precedence over the other, or do you see a path where they can be meaningfully integrated?
That it's going to evolve, and we'll have to wait and see. But for now, with clinical sharpness, documentation is only one path towards preserving that.
Yeah.
You can get supported with just reflecting and thinking about the client afterwards. Having a supervisor or a peer consultation group, journaling, process notes. There's so many ways, training. There's so many ways to preserve that clinical sharpness, that even if AI saves time doing a note after the session, the clinical sharpness, it wouldn't get lost. I think that if a therapist is consistently relying on AI to do all of the notes after every session, not thinking about the client afterwards and just moving on to the next thing, then yes, then over time it can erode. But this is up to every individual therapist. So for me personally, I do enjoy sometimes like writing my reflections on a session, thinking about the case. I go to a group consultation. So I think all of that stuff definitely helps. And also giving AI feedback. A therapist can read what AI wrote. And I've had notes that were generated by AI, and I would read it and like, actually, I don't think AI is focusing on the main essence of the session. It's focusing on what we talked about in the beginning of the session mostly, but it's missing a lot of the important things from the middle of the session. So I can use my brain to also give feedback to AI and facilitate that conversation.
I guess the risk, like you said, is when therapists treat AI purely as a time saver and skip the intentional pause to process the session in some form. So that's when the sharpness could start to erode.
To add to that, sometimes I've seen, AI advertised as this is going to save you time. The amount of time, if you spend 5 hours on notes, then you could see 5 clients during that time instead. But I would caution against that kind of thinking, because the time, if we have 24 hours in a day, all of that time is mindful and can be valuable. So yes, we can replace 5 hours of notes with 5 hours of clients, but help us better serve all of those, all of the volume of clients if we replace that time. And so I think we just need to, whatever we're doing, whether it's seeing a client or whether it's writing a note, to come to that task from a place of intentionality. And that way things will naturally balance out.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Ruthie. I really enjoyed this conversation, and your reflection on clinical sharpness, therapy self-care, and the evolving relationship with AI were so grounded and thoughtful. And I think a lot of therapists listening will feel seen and validated by what you are sharing. For those turning, I hope that give you some insight into how AI can support but never replace, and like the deep human work that happens in therapy. Yeah. Of course, if you are therapy exploring ways to streamline your notes while preserving clinical quality, stay tuned, and we will be sharing more real-world story like Rosie's in upcoming episodes. Thank you again, Rosie, and thank you so much for who are listening to us, and see you next time.